Hey, folks. We're on the wrong slide. Welcome to the last lecture of the semester. This is the Obama administration, and this will cap things off for us. So, before we actually get Obama elected, we have a big monster event at the close of George W. Bush's second term. Monster economic issue. And this has been compared to the opening of the Great Depression by economists at the time and today. At the time, we have the heads of the Federal Reserve. You don't have to get their names, but the heads of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke and Tim Geithner, as well as the Secretary of the Treasury, Hank Paulson, have all three said we were incredibly close to a second Great Depression if this thing would have been allowed to play out and if the federal government would have not got involved and let it go. Kind of like Hoover. Remember when we had Hoover at the opening of the Great Depression was hands off, and Paulson and Geithner and Bernanke have all argued that we were heading down that road, and so that's very scary. So what got us there? This is a little bit complicated, but not only is this great for our class, this is to me, and I am not a mortgage guy or anything like that, so definitely don't take my words as gospel, but these are the way that I have read things as a historian and as a home buyer and as a human. For the most part, there are usually three standard ways to buy a house. There's other ways, but the big ones that we're going to address, there's kind of three ways, and I can't spell, so there we go. But there's three main ways to buy a house. First, you've got a standard mortgage, a fixed rate mortgage, and what you do with that is you put either 10 to 20% down on a house, and so if you're buying a $200,000 house, you need to pony up, $20,000, or if you're going to put down 20%, $40,000 if you can squirrel that away. That's kind of hard. But for a standard fixed rate mortgage, you put down 10 to 20%, and then you get usually, sometimes you go as low as a 15-year. That's kind of unusual. Most people do like a 30-year mortgage. So you'll pay off your loan over the life of 30 years, and then at the end of 30 years, you'll own your house free and clear. That's the safest way. Okay. Now, again, not everybody can do that. There's other programs available that can get your down payment to be less. There's VA, and there's like first-time home buyers and all kinds of stuff. But what those usually tend to do is they'll drop the amount you put down. So that's the way. If you can, do that. All right. Fixed rate mortgage. That's what you really want to do. Again, historian, not a mortgage guy. But if you can buy a house, if you're going to buy a house and you can do a fixed rate mortgage, that's the way to go. Now, before the Great Recession, there were a couple of other widely available methods, and these are still available, but try to avoid them if you can. But not everybody can avoid stuff, and sometimes this is the only way you can get in. And for some situations, these do work. But another way that you can buy a house is you can get an adjustable rate mortgage. Now, that's okay. What happens here is that, let's say today, I haven't checked in a while, but I think today-ish, April the 7th of 2025, I think a 30-year home rate is about 8% interest. I could be slightly off on that, but last time I looked, it was about 7.5%, and so I'm just guesstimating that it might have went up. It actually might have went down a little bit, but it's been hovering around 7.5%, 8%. So you buy a house today under an adjustable rate mortgage, an ARM. Well, today it's at 8%. If the interest rate goes up to 10%, to 15%, to 20%, then your interest rate will climb. Now you also, hey, cool, if the economy crashes and interest rates drop to 3%, that might it's not going to happen. It might happen. So, you could benefit from this, but you also could be absolutely killed by this, because what if the interest rate goes up to 15, possibly 20%? Then your interest rate goes up and you will pay way more on the life of the loan. But a lot of mortgage companies at the time are getting people in and getting them to help to buy their house and using adjustable rate mortgages, because there's a very good chance that the interest rates will go up, and so the banks will get more money out of you. So that is a method to get people that aren't as well suited to get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. You can sometimes get them in under an ARM, and there's less requirements. Third, for our purposes, and again, there's more programs out there, but these are the big three. The other one, let's say you don't have anything to put down, or you have very, very little to put down, you can get what is called a balloon mortgage. Just like the adjustable rate mortgage, this one is also scary. And, from my opinion, try to avoid this one if at all possible. There's some reasons why you might go into this, but I would avoid everything. A balloon mortgage is what you do, as it says on there on the text. You have a low or no down payment. And initially, your payments are very low because, hey, using you guys as an example, and this is what some banks would reach out, you don't make that much money right now, because you're college students. And so we're going to get you into a house with very, very low payments. Okay, cool, rock and roll, right? And then when you get to the end of the string, you will hit the balloon. And the balloon is the full amount of the mortgage. And so usually you'll have very, very low payments, and you are not really even paying most of the principal. You're not paying any of the principal, and you're not hardly sometimes paying much of the interest. And so that's compounding. And at the end of 15 years, the entire rest of the mortgage comes due. And I'm just making up numbers, but let's say you buy a $200,000 house and you get a balloon, you might pay off like, say, $50,000, and that's going to get you really, really low payments over the course of 15 years. But then in 15 years, you have to pay $150,000 today. Okay? So balloons, low payments, but then you are hit with the entirety of the mortgage, the balance. Now, a good thing during this time period, middle 2000s, a lot of politicians are really, really championing the dream of home ownership for all Americans, that everybody in the United States should be able to buy a house if you want, and that should be achievable for everybody. And so politicians in Congress have lowered the standards on who can buy a house, on the requirements of getting a mortgage. And the banks have followed suit. The banks have also lowered the standards on who can buy a house. And so what they're doing is a turn. Get all three of these types of mortgages down, right? They're reaching out to a group of home buyers called subprime. These are people that want to buy a house, but unfortunately, through whatever reason, they are not a good credit risk. They haven't had a job and stayed at the same job for a long period of time. They don't have a sizable down payment. They have, shaky credit. They've had some charge-offs and stuff like that. And so these people on the whole are unfortunately not a good credit risk. But, politicians and banks are championing that, dream of American homeownership. And that honestly should be available to everybody, but sometimes your stuff is not in the cards for right now. Hopefully later, but sometimes not for right now. And so they're pushing out a lot of mortgages and reaching out to subprime borrowers. And these are people that are not in a good position to buy a house at the time, but they're going ahead and, hey, you don't have a down payment? Well, hey, I can get you into a balloon mortgage. You don't have good credit history. You do have a decent down payment, but you maybe are expecting to not stay in this house for very long. I can get you an adjustable rate mortgage, something like that, to reach out to the subprime borrowers. Okay, so what they've done is they've got a lot of people into homeownership that weren't possibly quite ready for it, and I'm trying to be kind of careful with my words and not villainize these people, because they're not bad people. They're just sometimes circumstances, man. So, but we have a wave of a lot of people that are not prepared for homeownership for some reason, whatever the heck the reason is. But there's a lot of people that are in mortgages that aren't really quite there financially or whatever the heck. Okay. Now another thing that's going on is, and you don't have to get this down, but the the banks have also figured something else out. Okay. Now, if I've got a group of, let's use all four of these different people as an example. If I've got a group of four homeowners, one person's got a fixed rate mortgage, one of them's got an adjustable rate, one's got a balloon, and one's got there's only three. I accidentally created a fourth with a subprime. What they're going to do is they're going to put the different groups together. Okay, so we're going to have this group of fixed rate mortgages, and we'll put them into one financial package for investors to get into. Now, this is a safe bet, so we're not going to pay very high interest on this one. If it pays off, it's not a lot of interest on this. But the adjustable rates will put them into another group, and the balloon mortgage people will put them into another group. Those are riskier investments. And so what the bank's going to do is they'll package a whole bunch of subprime borrowers, the adjustable rate mortgage people, and they'll package a whole bunch of balloon mortgage people together. And what they're going to do is, this sounds really weird and it's very complicated. I have a very loose understanding. But usually what happens is a bank will hold your mortgage. Okay, so if I buy a house, and I go through, say, Redstone Credit Union. Redstone Credit Union owns my mortgage, and I pay them that. Okay, well, what the banks have done back in 2007, 2008, and a little bit before that, instead of the bank owning your mortgage, they have created an investment portfolio. And you and me and anybody else can invest in these investment portfolios. And so I, as an individual, can have shares of a whole bunch of mortgages. The idea here, and it's a solid one as long as the economy's okay. The idea here is that if there's 5 people, well, let's say one person, Bob loses his job because it rhymes, and he can't pay his mortgage, and so he is going to foreclose. The bank will get that, but they're not getting any money. Okay, that's not cool, but from our investors' point of view, we still got 4 people that are paying their mortgages, and so I still make money as an investor. That's okay. What happens though, in 2008, the economy falters. And we're in what is called a housing bubble, okay? And a couple of things are going on. One, because every single body is able to buy a house, and you don't have to have any proof at all of your capability of buying a house. You don't have to have anything like that. You just go to the bank and I want to buy a house. Well, can you come up with a little bit of money? Yeah. Okay, well, let's sign the paperwork. That's all you had to do around this time. And we bought a house. When I was in graduate school, we bought a house. It was either 2002 or 2003, and the bank didn't require anything. They didn't require a letter from my employer, from my wife's employer. They required a very small down payment. I had decent credit at the time. I still do, but I had decent credit at the time. And so, I don't know if I fell into the subprime thing, but the bank was like, yeah, sure, no problem. We'll get you a loan. Well, so we're in a housing bubble, and since a lot of there you go. That's sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. Since a lot of people are able to buy houses, that's supply and demand, right? And so the supply of houses went down, and so demand for houses goes up, and so the price of houses goes up quite a lot. And so in a lot of communities, not every community, but in a lot of communities, house prices are inflated. Remember that. Now, in 2008, the economy falters, and so some people start losing their jobs, and it happens throughout the United States. And so our little example of 5 people being able to, 5 people with mortgages, and Bob is laid off, and so he's not going to pay his mortgage. Well, okay, we can handle that. But in 2008, it's like 4 people out of the 5 lose their jobs. And so in those investment portfolios that are largely owned by the banks, there's several investing houses they're holding on to these investment portfolios. They might be getting 1 person out of the 5 to be paying on their mortgage. And so they are having incredible trouble. And so hundreds of thousands of people lose their jobs, and they're unable to pay their mortgages. And so the banks themselves are at risk. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, so what? And we'll get there. But the banks are at risk because they are unable to take care of these risky loans. Now, so they're gonna super hard time. Now, here's the cool part. Just like I said a second ago, you're probably sitting there, well, the banks did this to themselves. The banks should accept their punishment and move on. They invested in a risky thing, and sometimes there are consequences for bad investments. And that's what a lot of the American people thought. And really cool, that's exactly what President George W. Bush thought. This is very much paraphrased, but when he was told by, is it Ben Bernanke? I think was his, Ben Bernanke is the head of the Federal Reserve under George W. Bush. Ben Bernanke went to Bush and said, hey, Bear Stearns and a couple of other ones. Lehman Brothers and Washington Mutual. Those are the big three that collapsed. Bernanke went to the president and said, hey, there are several big investing houses that when the economy faltered recently, they are in major, major trouble. And super paraphrasing, Bush is reported to have said, well, that's unfortunate for the banks, but they took a risk and there are consequences. And so the president was like, yeah, if you make bad investments, sometimes they don't pan out. And that's unfortunate. But Bernanke, again, the head of the Federal Reserve, allegedly in the same conversation said, sir, you don't understand. And that's the guy let's see, not the guy in the red tie, but the far on my left-hand side, the guy with the receding, very receding hairline and the beard, that's Ben Bernanke. George W. Bush is standing at the podium. The other bald guy is Hank Paulson. He is the Secretary of the Treasury. I don't know who the guy with the brown hair is. I'm not sure. But Bernanke said, sir, you don't understand. If these banks fail, they are going to drag the United States economy down with them. Because think about it, every single thing we do goes through the banks. You get paid and it's deposited in your bank account if you have direct deposit, and then you pay your bills through that, and your employer, they are going to pay their bills and they are paid through the banks. And so everything moves through the banks. And so if the banks start closing down, we're shutting down the economy. And so you might be like, oh, well, that's fine. No, it's bad. Bernanke, though, tells him you can't do this. And honestly, several those ones that I mentioned, you don't have to get them down, but Washington Mutual, Lehman Brothers, and Stearns, they all collapse. And kind of cool, you don't have to get this down, but Lehman Brothers was started here in Huntsville. It was an investment house here in Huntsville, and then relocated to New York City. So Bernanke implores the president, we can't let this happen. We have to do something about this. And I need you to get something down, because this is one of those things where we have heard it and we think we kind of know what happened. And even at the time, we thought we knew what was going on, but in reality, it's quite different. And so what we kind of thought we were listening to at the time, and what a lot of people still think, is that the banks were bailed out and that the United States government gave the banks money to help them to weather this storm. Sort of. The United States government loaned the banks money. That money was going to have to be paid back. Kind of cool, and you don't have to get this down, but they called in the heads of all of the major banks. There were about 16 or 20 during a kind of a big meeting at this time. And they told each one of them, you're going to have to take one of these TARP loans. And if only a couple of banks take the TARP loans, then it's going to seem like those banks are in trouble. And so they want to send a message, and every bank takes a TARP loan. And every single bank paid their loans back. The United States government charged them interest. And so in this bailout back in 2008, 2009, when the United States government gave these banks money, they did loan them money, and the United States government made money on this deal because they were charging interest, and every one of these banks had to pay this back. So that's a big thing. Now, we just sort of, the American public, kind of got that, and it was spun by several news organizations, but we sort of got, oh, the banks got money. They gave the banks money because these banks could not fail, and that's uncomfortable. But if the banks did fail, that would have been really, really wholly bad for the economy. And so the United States people, though, just kind of heard they gave the banks money. They bailed them out. The United States government also gave money to auto manufacturers. They had to pay that money back too. But since we as a society misheard that, we didn't get to look at the loan agreement and stuff that they were going to have to pay this back and how much of a percentage it was. The phrase "too big to fail" was thrown around quite a lot by the news media and by us, the American public, because honestly, these institutions employed a lot of people. They're integral to the American economy, to the global economy. If you allow them to die, that's going to send ripples out. It's going to be a really, really bad thing. And so, yes, they are too big to fail, unfortunately. If these things crumble to the ground, we're going to have some bad situations. But we hear that. And so you hear this phrase, "too big to fail," and you get a couple of different weird, interesting movements. One, immediately, you get this movement called Occupy Wall Street. And there were, in New York City and in a lot of major cities, at the time I lived in Lubbock, Texas, there was an Occupy Wall Street sort of camp out next to a bank just off campus. Ours was kind of not really impressive. I think there were like 5 people that camped out there. But the argument was that, Occupy Wall Street, foreclose on banks, not people, because the American people were not getting bailed out right now. We're bailing out the banks. And so there's a lot of anger from sort of the masses. Now, very quickly after, though, and I don't know why, but I was an adult through this, and I kind of followed a little bit of the news about what was going on, but I don't remember hearing about this next thing. And that's kind of cool, because I don't think a lot of the American public did either. And I didn't follow the news as close as I do now, but I don't remember hearing about this. But so Occupy Wall Street's out there. They're mad. Hey, you should be bailing out Main Street, not bailing out Wall Street. And that's going to be a campaign slogan here in a little while. But after Obama is elected, next slide, we'll elect Barack Obama as president. Obama did put 2 very, very big programs into place to try to help people that got caught up in the home ownership crisis. Those people that lost their jobs, they had stable jobs, they lost their jobs because of the financial collapse. There were 2 very big things. You don't have to get them down, but there was the Hardest Hit Fund, as well as the Home Affordable Modification Program. But those didn't get a lot of airtime. They didn't get a lot of publicity at the time. They were around, and people did hear about them, but they didn't get a lot. I didn't hear about them, but they didn't get a lot of attention, I think. So, but Occupy Wall Street was, hey, you're giving money to the banks, not giving it to the people. Well, then, here in a second, after Obama is elected, the United States government does start giving money to the people. And with that, we're going to see pushback against that. There is a subset of the Republican Party that emerges around this time called the Tea Party. And they're going to, be kind of capitalizing on the Boston Tea Party thing. A lot of them are going to be yelling no taxation without representation kind of stuff. And guess what they're opposed to? They're opposed initially, they kind of morph into something else. They're opposed initially to those programs that are helping out homeowners to keep their homes. They're arguing that government spending is way out of control. We're bailing out the banks, and now we're bailing out homeowners, and you really start seeing, and it's really easy to do, but you really start seeing the Tea Party villainizing those people that were caught up in this, the subprime borrowers and stuff that were talked into borrowing and buying a house, and they weren't ready to do that. You see that, oh my gosh, these are lazy people and they're takers, and really villainizing those kinds of people. The Tea Party is also really, really big on cutting taxes. They're going after that no taxation without representation stuff, and so they're really big on cutting taxes and cutting government spending. So remember that. There's lots and lots of details on these last couple of lectures. Sorry about that. Now, one that affects you, that the Tea Party goes after, is we're spending a whole lot of money on education. And we shouldn't be spending all of this money on education. And so in the 2008, 2009, 2010 kind of years, you see a lot of states cut back on their education spending. And when I was going to undergrad and then for most of grad school, the states and to a degree, I'm not sure how much of a percentage balance this was, but the states and the federal government subsidized tuition by the range from about 30% to about 50%. So about 30 to 50% of public schools. So Calhoun, Texas Tech, I went to MTSU, I went to Austin Peay. All of those public colleges and universities, I went to Motlow, I went to a lot of different places. All of those public schools, community college, public universities, student tuition was subsidized, between 30 to 50%, depending on what state you were in. And that drops as a result of the Tea Party, as a result of let's cut education spending. These people, students, should pay for this stuff themselves. And so today it's about 10%. And so it used to be a lot more, and then they've cut that to where the state currently subsidizes your tuition to about the tune of 10%. And then if you are taking out loans or whatever, you're paying the other 90%. The Tea Party I think they last until about 6 years. Okay. So yeah, from about 2010 until about 2016. And then the Tea Party sort of dies off, and they become the Freedom Caucus, which is another kind of far right subset of the Republican Party in Congress. So now all of this stuff happens in the middle of a presidential election. The economy crashed, and this was in the middle of a presidential election. There was discussion, you don't have to get this down, but it was kind of interesting. There was discussion between Obama and the McCain camps. Should we pause the campaign and go back to Washington and try to address the declining economy? What the heck should we do? And so there was a little bit of dispute on maybe pausing the election for a minute and then going back on the campaign trail or whatever the heck. But all of it happened in the middle of a presidential election. And this election, George W. Bush, had served 2 terms. And so the 2008 election was free. There was no incumbent. And so on the Democratic side, you've got Barack Obama. And on the Republican side, you've got John McCain. scribbly down kind of a thing. John McCain was a moderate Republican. He I can talk. He didn't completely vote with the Republicans all the time. Sometimes he voted with the Democrats, but he was not kind of an extreme on the right. He's very, very much a moderate Republican. I don't know if I would call him sort of a Nixon moderate. I think Nixon's in a different era, much more of a different kind of moderate. But McCain is definitely a moderate Republican. And wild, holy cow, shocker, Barack Obama is a moderate Democrat. He has been, a lot of political pundits and stuff like to paint Obama as this extreme kind of Democrat. He's not. He bails the banks out. That's not really a Democrat stance, y'all. But he is a fairly moderate Democrat. You don't have to get this down, but I like this line. But a guy from the Brookings Institute. Brookings Institute is a Washington, D.C. think tank. And one person from the Brookings Institute said that Barack Obama was a disappointingly conventional president. So very, very much moderate, does not do really too much. There are a couple of things that he does to kind of, that are a little bit more out there than you would expect at the time, possibly, but fairly moderate kind of guy. This election is really interesting. This is the first time that you have an African American candidate that represents a major party. Now, we've had African American candidates before, but not any from a major party, not the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. They've usually been third party challengers. Now, we also, unfortunately, we've always had stupid conspiracy nonsense, but during this election, the 2008 election, there's an African American man. Holy crap, his middle name is Hussein. One of his parents is not an American citizen, so you have a lot of conspiracy nonsense, Alex Jones kind of stupidity that really flares up during this election. One is that somehow Obama is a secret Muslim. It wouldn't matter. There is not a religious qualification for president, but his middle name is Hussein. That sounds like Saddam Hussein, so Obama must be a secret Muslim, right? That's a Middle Eastern sounding name. He's not, but it shouldn't matter, But that did freak a lot of people out. Another thing that freaked a lot of people out is that and this is, I'm not going to say it, but another thing that freaked a lot of people out is that Obama's dad was originally from Kenya. And he came to the United States, started dating an American graduate student while he was a graduate student, and the American graduate student got pregnant. I don't know if they got married, but at some point Obama's dad went back to Kenya. And so there was a big thing about, oh my gosh, is this guy a citizen of the United States? And a lot of that has to do with race. He's an African American guy, and that gives something to jump on that he's not a citizen because his dad's from Kenya. And so he's, there's allegations that Obama was not born in the United States. He was born in Hawaii. And guess who wasn't born in the United States in that picture? John McCain. John McCain was born in the Panama Canal Zone, but he was born to American parents. And so that makes him an American citizen. If one of your parents is an American citizen, you're an American citizen. But Obama, has this allegation over his head. Back in 2009, Donald Trump took out full-page newspaper ads alleging that Barack Obama was not born in the United States and was not an American citizen and was ineligible to be president. And so there was a call in the newspaper ads that Trump posted demanding that Obama produce his birth certificate, because that's going to prove, right? Well, Obama produced his birth certificate. It says he's born in Hawaii. It says his mother is an American citizen. And that should be the end of it. Obama produced that, and then Trump demanded something called a long form birth certificate. Honestly, that's evidently it's a thing, but I don't know what it is. I don't have one. So, but Trump kind of kept on the birtherism stuff and demanded that Obama produce a long form birth certificate. Again, I don't know what that means. But you really start to see the Republican Party start dipping their toes into the conspiracy stuff. I don't believe that any current politicians at the time were going on Alex Jones's radio station, but that's coming soon. That does come pretty soon. Another thing that Obama's going to win the election, like because yeah. But another thing that's really interesting with this election happened during the primaries, and keep in mind this is 2008. Before the Democrats had settled on Obama, the people that were running for the campaign spot to represent the Democrats, Obama was there, Hillary Clinton was there, and a governor out of New Mexico, a guy named Bill Richardson. Those three were the primary contenders. I don't remember if there was another person or not, but I do remember those three. And at a public forum, I don't know where this was located, but all three, Bill Richardson, Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the moderator were on a stage. And they were asking, did any of them support same-sex marriage? And in 2008, it's really, I know it sounds really weird, but things sometimes move fast. But in 2008, it was really unclear how most Americans felt. If they really felt like that this was a solid thing, or if it wasn't. And so, I don't know if I'm recording. Hey, sorry about that. I thought we had an audio issue, but apparently we did not, so we're good. All right, so Richardson, Clinton, and Obama were on the same stage, and they were all being asked, hey, what do you feel about same-sex marriage? And again, this is 2008, and none of them said that they supported same-sex marriage. They did say, and I think to my memory, all of them agreed to say that they did support civil unions, and so they supported some kind of legal status for same-sex couples, but they weren't quite willing to go far enough to call that marriage. Because the American public wasn't really chiming in on this fully just yet, and it was really unsure how the American people felt. And if you say the wrong thing, if you go too far during a campaign or not far enough, that can cost you voters. And so the safe bet for them all three was to say we support civil unions, because the Democratic Party is moving into supporting, same-sex equality kind of stuff, but is it moving that far? And so so they weren't really sure what to do, and so they all opted for civil unions, which was kind of interesting. So later in 2010, so that was 2008. Later on, in 2010, after Obama has been elected and has been in office for a couple of years, he does take a little bit of a step to try to test the waters to see how far, the American people, what they're okay with and what they feel about things. And in 2010, Obama issued an executive order basically really close to the same kind of executive order that Harry Truman issued in 1946 when Truman desegregated the military. In 2010, Obama repealed the Clinton program of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and this executive order allowed for gays and lesbians to openly serve in the military. So you can come out and say that you're gay or lesbian, and you can't be discharged for the military on that. This does get a lot of pushback from the Republican Party. That's the socially conservative party. They're not really interested in a lot of change. And so that does get a lot of pushback from the Republican Party. One of the, at the time, she's kind of disappeared, and I don't know what the heck happened to her now, and you don't have to get her down, but at the time, get her sentiment down. A rising star in the Republican Party, a lady named Michelle Bachmann, said that allowing gays and lesbians to serve in the United States military would destroy the United States military. And that hasn't happened. Michelle Bachmann was being overly dramatic. She was being dumb. She was catastrophizing, and just being nonsensical. And so nothing happened though, right? Gay and lesbian people can serve in the military openly, and it's fine. Not really a big deal. Obama did get a lot of support definitely from Democrats, but he also got a lot of support from the center. And when we talk about politics, we need to think about people on the right, the Republicans, people on the left, the Democrats, and a lot of people are in the center. And you've got to attract those voters, those centrist voters. And so he got a lot of support from the center on that, because as a society, we were moving in that direction to being more accepting of same-sex marriage. And so don't have to get this down, but in 2012, I don't know if it was right after the election or just before. I suspect it was just before. But in 2012, Obama came out and said that he fully supported same-sex marriage, which is 4 years ago were civil unions. But we've seen that the American people are, for the most part, cool with this, and so he is going to kind of follow that lead. Something kind of cool, it actually is cool, not even kind of cool, but in 2022, during midterms, some of the people that voted against, same-sex marriage and voted for this, there was a protection of marriage bill that got proposed in Congress a while back. But some of those people that voted for that in 2022 voted for a bill that would protect same-sex marriage. And one of those people was Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney is a Republican, and he's kind of been not full far right. He's kind of a little bitish moderate, kind of. But he's actually kind of flipped on that. And so you're starting to see even the social conservatives are kind of getting on board with, who cares if two people get married? It's not my business. Last thing with Obama that I do want to run through is the Affordable Care Act, known mostly as Obamacare. We're going to rewind, Bo. Before I talk about this, we're going to rewind because a lot of times we kind of got to get some history on current events for us anyway. Back during Clinton's administration, Bill Clinton, back during Bill Clinton's administration, was it 1992 to 2000. Back during his administration, Hillary, First Lady, proposed universal health care. Look, we need to get rid of health insurance companies. We just need to increase taxes a smidge, and everybody in the United States should have access to health care. Every single developed country in the world in 1992 had universal health care. Some of them had universal health care going back to the 1940s and 1950s. We are dragging on this. And so her argument was, we need to have universal health care. We need to just roll this out. And a lot of folks on the Republican side were doing the same song and dance. That's socialism. We can't do that. People will take horrible advantage and everyone will be lazy and all kinds of stuff. And so remember this for about 5 seconds. A Republican named Newt Gingrich had a proposal. Check it. If you have health insurance through your work, you keep your health insurance through your work. If you don't have health insurance through your work, it's not fair that you are going to the emergency room and are going to see doctors and that you're not paying for it. That's, in his words, irresponsible. And the people that are paying and having health insurance through their work, they're the ones that are paying for your care. So what we're going to do is, if you have health insurance through your work, you keep that. If you don't have health insurance through your work or private health insurance, we are going to create an individual mandate. We're going to create this federal government system. You'll pay in a little bit. That will be your health insurance. And you're required to buy health insurance through the federal government, through this, we'll call it a marketplace or something like that. But that's what we're going to do. And so that was the answer to Hillary Clinton's universal health care. And both of those things got smushed. Not enough people wanted universal health care. The Republicans were against it. The individual mandate thing that Newt Gingrich was proposing was not inclusive enough and did not cover enough. And so both of those things just kind of died, unfortunately. So Obama gets elected president, and in his second term, you don't have to remember what term he did this, but in his second term, he proposed this Affordable Care Act. Now here, check it out. Let me know if you've heard this before too. Under Obamacare, if you have insurance through your work, you get to keep it. If you don't have insurance through your work, that's not fair. The people that do have insurance are paying for your care, and that's not cool. So if you don't have insurance through your work or private insurance, we're going to create a thing. We'll call it an individual mandate. And you will be required to buy health insurance through something called a marketplace. And you will have health insurance that way. And so basically, Obamacare is just taking the Republican proposal from way back in, I think it was 94 when Hillary Clinton was championing this. We're just going to repackage that as Obamacare. So this was originally a Republican program. All right? Well, Obamacare gets put into place. The Republicans vote against it because, hey, that's requiring everybody to pay into health insurance. It also sounds like socialism, so we're against it. And so they fought it. Absolutely fought it. And there have been multiple attempts at repealing Obamacare by the Republican Party. This thing that was originally a Republican idea championed by Newt Gingrich. Now, within Obamacare, one of the absolutely, I don't care who you are, but one of the absolutely amazing things that is included in Obamacare is that last line on the slide. Prior to Obamacare, if you had health insurance and you had a catastrophic illness, if you had severe cancer, if you had kidney failure and you required dialysis and you required kidney transplants, stuff like that, your health insurance company had a limit. This is a lifetime care limit. And they will pay for your care up to that limit. And if you go over that, they can legally cut you off, and your choice is to die. And so if you go over your health care limit, your health insurance company can cut you off. And that's all the money that you ever get from them for the rest of your life. So if you need another kidney or you need a liver, you better go rob a bank. Don't go rob a bank. Holy cow, I shouldn't have said that. Do not rob banks. But Obamacare gets rid of that. Health insurance companies, if you're going to be a health insurance company, you cannot cut people off. That's holy cow wrong. People pay insurance premiums so that if they are in a catastrophic state and they need health care, they should have access to health care. And so Obamacare gets rid of lifetime care limits. We do not have lifetime care limits because of Obamacare. And so that thankfully goes away. For the rest of Obama's administration, though, he issues an executive order getting rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, allowing same-sex folks, gay and lesbian people, to serve in the military openly. Gets Obamacare through the United States Congress, signs off on it, expands health care for a lot of people. And honestly, outside of that, the rest of his administration is economic recovery. That's it. There aren't any scandals, really. Like one time he wore a tan suit and a lot of people freaked out. Look it up, I'm not joking. But there weren't any scandals. I am not aware of any big name people within the administration that were charged with any crimes or were convicted of any crimes. It was just kind of economic recovery, and that was about it. One thing that we did incorrectly think with the Obama presidency, since he is an African American president, we thought for a second that we were somehow in this kind of post-racial society where race didn't matter as much. And we had kind of, as a society, somewhat moved past issues of race and stuff. And that was a cool thought while it lasted, but we've seen that that's not the case. We still have some very, very heavy-duty, serious problems with race in the United States and stuff like that. So, and with that, we are at a close for the class. I tend to get us to about 10 years ago, and Obama will serve until 2012. Or no, sorry, 2008, 2016. Sorry. He'll serve until 2016, so in about a year or something, I'll start covering 2016 stuff going on. So I hope you guys have all enjoyed the class. I have really enjoyed playing for you. To me, this is a lot of fun, just standing in front of you and telling stories and goofy stuff like that. I hope you've liked that. And so if you have any questions on this lecture or anything else, please feel free to email me. You can also ask in class during the review. And I will see you guys next time.